just watching on from ringside, a good manager should do whatever they can to accentuate their clients and make sure the spotlight shines brightly on them. Rather than attract the right kind of attention, however, some misplaced managers have ended up detracting from the very people they were supposed to be assisting. A bad clash of personalities can lead to some brief but lamentable coalitions, as we have seen throughout the decades. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 weirdest wrestler-manager combinations. Join us! Number 10, Ricardo Rodriguez and Rob Van Dam. An outspoken loner by nature, it's no surprise that Rob Van Dam hasn't really had many managers besides Bill Alfonso in ECW, and let's face it, he did a lot more whistleblowing than talking. The RVD and Alfonso combination, odd as it was on the surface, worked to charm. Van Dam's strange and forgettable alliance with Ricardo Rodriguez, on the other hand, most certainly did not. The two joined forces not long after the whole flippin' show's WWE return in the summer of 2013, and it made a bit of sense since it led to Van Dam targeting Ricardo's former client, then World Heavyweight Champion Alberto Del Rio. Rodriguez himself didn't understand the creative direction and thought it was a rib by Dean Malenko at first, but was simply happy to be back on television. Ricardo didn't really add anything to Van Dam's presentation, and the two couldn't be accused of having overwhelming chemistry together, with the most notable thing about their union being just how dorky Rodriguez looked wearing his RVD shirts. If nothing else, at least it was short-lived, as they got together in August and split by October. RVD has smoked joints that have lasted longer than that. Number 9, Zeb Colter and Alberto Del Rio. Ricardo Rodriguez and Rob Van Dam may have been a mismatch, but the Ricardo and Alberto Del Rio pairing was simply great stuff and helped define both men's WWE careers. Fans would have been happy seeing Rodriguez come back with Del Rio when the Mexican star made his return at Hell in a Cell 2015, but they were instead treated to the nonsensical twosome of Alberto and Zeb Colter, also making his return after an absence. Ah yes, the classic trade of the young Hispanic personal ring announcer for the aging xenophobe. It made not a lick of sense, something Dutch Mantel freely admitted, while also noting that the two didn't have a spark between them, something that the crowd picked up on from the get-go. It was hardly a shocker when they went their separate ways after less than 2 months, with Colter written out of storylines and ultimately being released without making another appearance. It speaks to just how unpopular this act was that for Del Rio, joining the ill-fated League of Nations was viewed as a massive upgrade. Number 8, Oliver Humperdink and Bam Bam Bigelow. To establish him as a big deal from the word jump, WWE presented a storyline where various managers battled for the signature of Bam Bam Bigelow. Everyone from Bobby Heenan and Slick to Jimmy Hart and Mr. Fuji wanted to bag the beast from the East, so it was only natural that Bigelow should end up with Oliver Humperdink? Yes, the menacing man with the flame tattoo on his actual head went with the ginger wizard. Now, it must be said that Bam Bam wasn't the greatest promo in the world at this point and could have definitely benefited from someone doing his talking for him. And Humperdink, to his credit, was good at what he did, but what he did was typically manage heels. The combination just didn't work, and Humperdink couldn't hide his unease at being a good guy behind his Technicolor dreamcoat. Bigelow proved throughout the rest of his career that he was also far more astute at being a heel, and bringing him in as a baddie alongside the Weasel or the Mouth of the South would have worked a treat. Incredibly, Bammer and Sir Oliver stayed together on the Indies and in the NWA after their WWE run. Number 7, Roddy Piper and Sean O'Haire. After a spell in WWE's developmental system, Sean O'Haire re-emerged on the main roster as a member of the SmackDown brand in early 2003. Appearing with an intriguing devil's advocate gimmick, the former WCW Tag Team Champion would use his powers of persuasion to encourage WWE stars to perform sinful deeds. Despite its novelty, the gimmick was quickly dropped, and O'Haire was instead paired with the recently returned Roddy Piper for reasons, I'm sure. The Rowdy Scott was likely recruited to cut promos for the big tattooed bruiser, while O'Haire could act as Piper's muscle. A simple concept, and one that had worked countless times before, but everything about this was just a little bit off. Granted, they both had a penchant for leather jackets, but that's about where the similarities ended. The two occasionally teamed, and opposites didn't exactly attract in the ring either, though they did challenge the odd couple team of Eddie Guerrero and Tajiri for the tag team titles. The Piper and O'Hare connection met an abrupt end when Hot Rod was fired for telling us nothing we didn't already know during an appearance on an HBO Real Sports episode on premature wrestling deaths. Number 6, Sunny and Farouk. 1996 was a big year for Sunny, who guided 3 teams to tag title glory: the Body Donners, the Godwins, and the Smoking Guns, while also being named AOL's most downloaded celebrity of the year. 96 wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for the blonde bombshell, however, as her brief dalliance with Farouk was a rare misfire. Now, without stating the obvious of how goddamn ridiculous the former WCW heavyweight champion looked in that stupid gladiator helmet, the act just didn't work and was a decidedly random way to debut the Farouk character. According to Sunny herself, hardly the most reliable source out there, but hey, WWE wanted her and Simmons to be more of an on-screen couple, something she protested. According to Bruce Pritchard, Vince McMahon himself had the idea of putting Sunny with Farouk as a way to get him heat from the off, though soon conceded that the audience wasn't buying what he was selling and changed back. Before long, Farouk had formed the Nation of Domination and Sunny had transitioned into more of an on-air personality rather than a manager. Her next and final WWE clients would be the Legion of Doom. Go figure. Number 5, Bob Backlund and Darren Young. Not too long after his improbable world title win and feud with Bret Hart, Bob Backlund became a manager, helping the Iron Sheik and the Sultan to untold glory. It's untold glory in this case because there was no glory, and thus I can't tell you about it. After a brief period where he tried to teach a rookie Kurt Angle the value of a cross-faced chicken wing, Backlund came back in 2016 to make Darren Young great again. Look, nothing against the bloke, but I'm not sure if Darren Young was actually ever great in the first place. In any event, Mr. No Days Off enlisted Bob's help as a life coach, and the former WWE champion did everything he could to further Young's career, which wasn't much. In truth, this was simply the latest attempt to make the one-time primetime player a singles star. It, like all previous attempts, did not come off. You know what? The Young and Backlund partnership could have been a fun one, but fans were not convinced. Credit to Darren, whose idea the whole storyline was in the first place, for being proactive in trying to give his career a shot in the arm, but his association with the Hall of Famer never properly clicked. Number 4, Jim Cornette and MANTAUR. Jim Cornette, for all his faults, and there are plenty of them, will go down in history as one of the best professional wrestling managers of all time. His list of clients is legendary, and he counts multiple champions among those who have benefited from his wisdom. That said, one thing he couldn't do is make a half-man, half-bull any less preposterous than it inherently was. The Prince of Polyester was given his new task 20 minutes before MANTAUR's debut and initially believed that it was a rib at his expense. Probably because, and I cannot emphasize this enough, he was being asked to manage a half-man, half-bull. The new generation was littered with wacky characters, but MANTAUR was the wackiest, making Corny's candy-coloured suits seem tame by comparison. They were not affiliated for long, with MANTAUR only making a handful of televised appearances during his 6-month stint. Jimmy, meanwhile, tried to erase any memory of managing the Beast by focusing on Camp Cornette thoroughbreds Vader, Owen Hart, and the British Bulldog. Cornette, if you're watching this, and I'm sure you are, please respond to my assessment with a rambling, expletive-filled 40-minute video of your own. Number 3, DAIVARI and Kurt Angle. WWE were faced with a bit of a problem when Kurt Angle challenged WWE champion John Cena in the autumn of 2005. The Olympic hero was, by this point, almost universally adored by WWE fans who were thankful for 5 years of first-class entertainment. The Doctor of Thugonomics, meanwhile, was starting to hear a smattering of boos from the dissenters in the crowd. To try and swing the tide, WWE brought back DAIVARI, recently the manager of the controversial Muhammad Hassan, to act as Angle's personal referee before then becoming his manager. You can appreciate the intent here, but the fact is Kurt didn't need anybody to do his talking for him, and his program with Cena didn't benefit from the added distraction. The partnership also failed to make fans boo Angle, as evidenced by the rapturous response he received at New Year's Revolution 2006, following the infamous over-the-top promo where he basically conceded to being beloved. Kurt turned babyface soon after and kicked DAIVARI to the curb, with the Heat Seeker finding solace in the massive arms of Mark Henry, the world's strongest shoulder to cry on. Number 2, Brother Love and The Undertaker. One of the definitive manager-wrestler combos in all of professional wrestling was Paul Bearer and The Undertaker. A match made in heaven. If heaven were filled with death and destruction and populated by zombie morticians, the dead man and his keeper complemented each other perfectly. They're so inextricably linked that fans tend to overlook the fact that the Demon of Death Valley debuted with a different man leading him to the ring. When The Undertaker emerged at the 1990 Survivor Series, he was accompanied by his original manager, Brother Love. And I mean, yeah, the giant terrifying funeral director next to the human tomato was a bit of a contrast, wasn't it? The man behind the makeup, Bruce Pritchard, voluntarily left his post because A, he wanted to devote himself fully to backstage duties, and B, he knew the act wasn't gelling. And so, on an episode of the Brother Love show, the white suit-wearing televangelist sold Taker's contract to Bearer, ending their unholy union after just a couple of months. Bearer, meanwhile, would manage Taker, as well as Mankind and Kane, to great success. Post-WWE, he also tried to give the rub to a future star, which brings us to number 1, Paul Bearer and LA Knight. Years before he transformed into super over WWE superstar LA Knight, Shawn Ricker was trying to make a name for himself on the independent circuit. Under old alias Percy Pringle III, Bearer managed Ricker for the NWA Championship Wrestling from Hollywood promotion. From 2010 until shortly before his passing in 2013, Bearer stood ringside and cut promos with and for Ricker. The two clearly formed a connection, since Bearer asked his assistant to keep some stuff for Knight while he was practically on his deathbed, with Bearer himself calling Ricker and assuring him that big things were in his future. LA Knight would later note how working with William Moody made him want to raise his game so that he could be considered in the same class as some of the other iconic talents the Hall of Famer had managed. Though the very idea of LA Knight being managed by Paul Bearer seems like something from some wonderfully weird alternate universe, it's clear that Moody recognized potential and wanted to use some of his own star power to help him advance in the business. Oh, yes! Yeah!